Thanks for the countdown, Dan. I can actually see that it's recording, funnily enough. Anyway, we are back here for episode 19 of the Making It podcast. We're almost there. We're almost at episode 20 already. I just want to give an early shout out to all the people that view us on TikTok. This one's for you. I don't know if this is going to get clipped or what, but you're legends, the lot of you. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for the weird stuff. Cheers for the insults. I think it's brilliant. It does make me laugh a little bit. Sometimes when I'm at work, I like to just scroll through it. On break, obviously, and see what people are saying. So thank you, first of all, for your social media interaction. Second of all, though, the most important part of why we're here, Dan, welcome to the podcast for episode 19. It's good to have you back and it's good to be talking to you again. The week's gone by quite quick, hasn't it?
I know, man. I know. It's a couple of big things have happened, so I'm looking forward to talking about them. Obviously, the last one we did was in the radio show, so we're back on doing the virtual one because I'm back in Newcastle. But we've only got a few more episodes now before you go to Australia, so it's going to be very, very interesting when you go there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to another episode. I think let's roll straight into it, Jamie. The question of this podcast and one of the main topics we're going to discuss is, what do I do now? We've spoke about it a little bit in some of our videos on our socials. We spoke about it in some of our other episodes. But what do I do now is quite a big one. And I want to dive straight into a little story. So last Sunday, as we mentioned on the last podcast, I did a marathon. And, I'd done my training and it was my second marathon. So it wasn't actually my first one. And it was going well. We started off with my mates, all four of us, Jacob, Riley and Aaron. We were running. And I did say to them, boys, we're going a bit too quick. But they were all like, we'll be all right. We'll be all right.
Typical, by the way. If you don't know these people, that is typical. Just saying.
But as the race went on, it got hotter, it got warmer because it was going into midday. And the water stations just felt like they were miles away. And it was just getting too hot. And as the time went on, we got to like miles and miles in. We got to about the 16th mile. It was just me and my mate Riley. Aaron and Jacob had dropped off a little bit. And I can't lie, I started to feel like I was struggling a bit. It was getting to me, the heat. And then Riley dropped off. And, I was by myself for a bit. And then it got to this point where I just couldn't. Maybe I could have carried on. I look back in hindsight, maybe I could have, but it was hot. I felt like I was getting a bit delirious. The water stations were taking ages, and I stopped. And, in that moment, it was like, okay, what do I do now? Because I've stopped now. And that was a big thing I was trying not to do. Because when you do a marathon, it's like, I want to do the whole thing without stopping like I did the first time. But it almost felt like I needed to. But in that moment, it was like, what do I do now? I called my mum. I called my girlfriend. I was like trying to get a bit of motivation. And I ended up running and walking the last of it. And the main thing for me was, in terms of what to do now in the physical moment, it was get to the end of this race, complete it. And I felt amazing for doing that. But I think afterwards it was like, don't beat yourself up for stopping. Because for me, I'm one of those people who wants to do what I've set out to do. So to not complete the marathon without stopping could have been very frustrating for me. But you know what? I just had the awareness and I said to myself, it was a tough day. It was really warm and I still completed a marathon either way. But that question for me, I know you've been speaking about it a lot as well, is a big one. But that's my story to kind of get into it. Have you got any, obviously you spoke about your surgery, but anything outside of that, like a what do I do now moment?
First of all, congratulations, Dan, because it's something that I've wanted to do for forever, but I can't at the moment. Obviously I can't, but I would like to still do it. I just don't think I'm physically or mentally strong enough to do it. So I think there's still some preparation to be done there. Over the next couple.
Do you want in Australia?
It's something I could work towards. It'd be difficult. I don't fancy running in that heat, to be honest, because by the time I'm ready, it will be summer. So, congratulations, man. I'm proud. It's good to see you doing these things, and you shouldn't be any less proud because you stopped. Because at the end of the day, and not to compare yourself to other people, but most people wouldn't even be able to start. So, it's a great thing for you to do, and also just show there's a bit of humanity to it. And sometimes these things do happen, because we are only people, and all the time we're seeing, and I just want to go off on a side point before I kind of answer your question, that all we see on social media is just people doing the best, doing the maximum that we feel we can do. In a way, they're doing the max of what we could achieve, or what they could achieve, at least on camera. Because I know people always say, this isn't my maximum, the next thing I do is, but at that moment in time, they're achieving their maximum, and that is all you're seeing on social media. And that's why it becomes like, when you do something good, you maybe initially kind of go, oh, I feel good. And then immediately afterwards, you'll go, yeah, but look at that person over. Just sometimes just look forward, look yourself in the mirror and go, wow, I've done some good stuff today. I've achieved. Don't worry about what anyone else is achieving because you aren't living their life. But on the kind of point you were asking, the what do I do now? I'll be honest, when you said the big question of the podcast, I was thinking you meant 100 men v one gorilla. I was thinking, right, I'm geared up here. I think 100 men, it depends how many are attacking it at once. And do you think 100 men or one gorilla? To be honest, Dan, I'm really not sure. But the what do I do now thing is like, I don't really know a recent situation, bar what I've already spoken about, that I can relate it to, because, I feel like the what do I do now thing, as of late, I've already kind of come past, and obviously I'm working now. I'm going on walks, doing loads of good stuff for me. So I'm feeling way more confident. Obviously, I'm earning money, which is really important as well, because I need that for when I go away. But I've been back in the garden, and doing bits out there, and that's so good. It has been hot this week. Like, it has been so hot.
I'm interested, Jamie. I'm interested because obviously in our very first introduction episode, me and you spoke about what we're both making it in. Went a bit Geordie there. But, obviously for you, football commentary was what you're making it in.
Yeah.
Now, when you're doing a commentary and, a game can go for, obviously it's 90 minutes. When you muck up a little bit during commentary, and because it's such a fast thing, you almost have to fill the spaces. You'll know more than me. What do you do in them moments? What do you do now in them moments when you kind of make a mistake during comms, or you muck up a few words? What do you do now then?
Well, there's quite a few things it depends on. Obviously, I do for hospital radio. So for anyone that doesn't know, live broadcasting usually comes with a 10 or 15-second delay from the actual game. And there's a reason for that. Because if I'm doing my professional broadcasting and I swear, for example, whoever's my director can cut out what I've said before the broadcast goes live. So there's always 10 seconds between what you say and what the listener or viewer sees. So they can always chop that out. There's actually a chance that our favourite commentators have made some horrendous mistakes, but they've been cut out completely.
That's interesting. I didn't know that at all.
It's interesting. So that is what I found out only a couple of months ago, and I've been doing this 4 years. But with my hospital radio stuff, what you say goes out live. Obviously, dependent on your Wi-Fi situation and whatever connection you've got. But it goes out live 99% of the time as it is, which is really, really kind of nerve-wracking, because you always, if you think to yourself, I'm going to say something wrong, chances are you will. So, don't think it into existence. Only manifest good things. I was at Wembley last Sunday doing the commentary of the FA Cup semi-finals, which was a dream for me. Obviously, it was really unfortunate Forest didn't get through, but I thought from a broadcast perspective that it was really successful. I thought that we did really well. I had to produce scripts for it. I had to do way more preparation than normal. I had to prepare for about 2.5 hours of football, or in fact, probably about 3 hours of football pre-match and post-match. So, which is something that I've not done for quite a while. And being at Wembley is always amazing because it is just such a great venue. But like, with things going wrong now, it happens so unfrequently. Like, I'm sure he won't mind me saying it, but my co-commentator Lewis was commentating on Forest v Arsenal at the City Ground, and we were sitting down, and he was the main comms, and he called Leandro Trossard Leandro Trossard. And I kind of turned around to him, and I just made a joke about it live on air, and I went, "Who's that, Lewis? Is it a new player?" And you play it off, and if you are doing a commentary on your own, when you make a mistake, you feel super lonely and you will sweat. Like, especially if I'm doing a pro one on my own, I'm sweating. I'm like a bit nervous, but you have to just smack yourself and kind of get back into it. When you're with someone, they will probably pick up on it and have a bit of a laugh with you, or they'll just kind of go quiet and let you do your thing. So it depends on your dynamics with someone. But in that situation, in the what do I do now situation, you rely on experience. So there's two different kinds of what do I do now, which I think is quite interesting, because you've got the first time what do I do now in terms of, obviously this past month has been a new experience for me. When I go to Australia will be a new experience for me. Coaching, when we both first started, is a new experience. So your what do I do now, you're basing it either off someone else's experience so your own experience or advice.
The dog likes what you're saying, mate.
Yeah, the dog is cheering me on. Cheers, B. I appreciate that. But if that carries on, I'll have to let you just take over here, Dan. Right, but like in terms of the what do I do now, you've got the sort of the first time one, and you base that off someone else's experience or advice, and you've got the one that you've already experienced where you go, okay, I've been in this situation before or similar. This is what I did last time. This is what I could do, and that is the kind of difference. So I do think there's different kinds. I do think it is better to have more experience. Obviously I've been away to Australia, so it's not like I'm going to be, holy, what the hell do I do at all? But you know what I'm saying? So it's always more daunting when you don't know what to expect, and you're plunged into something head on. But these are situations that make you as a person, I think, when you're just thrown into it, because then you either sink or swim, and that's up to you.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because obviously, like you're saying, when it comes to what do I do now, a lot of the time when you have experience, it's like you can kind of cater yourself to that sort of like, I don't know, you've messed up in commentary. Maybe you've done that before, where you can cater yourself to then do the next steps because you've done that, you've been there before. So I agree with what you're saying. Like there's moments where it's like, what do I do now? A new situation. And then there's one you've already experienced before. But I think a lot of it kind of comes from preparation. Beforehand, have you thought about the other option? Say yesterday, right? I had my sports ball. So for the listeners, I got nominated as Sport Intern of the Year. I mentioned it on one of the previous podcasts, so I'm very grateful for that. I went to my sports ball, but I can't lie, I was quite nervous before because it's like, these things that aren't predictable. I definitely want to dive into that a little bit. Those outcomes which aren't predictable.
Was it a moment you couldn't visualize the after part? Was it one of them?
No, as in like I didn't know if I was going to win or not.
Okay.
So for me, it was like beforehand, I sat down with myself and I kind of like did a few deep breaths and I just kind of visualized the night and how it would go, whether I win or lose. And I think going into it, I was just aware, like I was grateful just to be there, just to be nominated. That was a privilege. So when I then found out that I didn't win and it was another intern that won, I could I'm going to put a vlog out. So for all the listeners, go and watch that. You'll see my reaction. I just clapped and I was just like, fair play. I'm happy to be here. It's out of my control if I win an award or not. Just to be nominated for an award is a privilege. So I think a lot of it just come through preparation as well. In those moments of what do you do now, sometimes it's good to kind of prepare and think about, okay, I'm going into something. What could go wrong doing this? If it does go wrong, what do I do then? It's almost like you can pre-ask that question, but in those moments where you've never experienced it or they're not predictable, what do I do now is just a good question to ask yourself to kind of think on your feet. But I want to dive into that a little bit because I find a lot of things that aren't predictable in life are what, for me, build a lot of nerves, a lot of anticipation. How do you deal with almost like things you can't predict? You go about your day and something happens out of nowhere. I guess it ties into the theme of this podcast. What do you do now? But how do you experience things where you can't really predict what's going to happen, or something happens which was unpredictable?
Well, for situations that you can't predict what's going to happen, which it's very rare you'll find a situation that someone else hasn't experienced. So almost every situation you could predict from someone else's perspective, but from your own, obviously, it's the complete opposite. It's a difficult thing. I would say that for situations that I know are going to happen, but I can't predict, I'm always feeling anxious up until probably the last hour before it happens. But then my mind enters the sort of, well, what can I change? Sort of like, what can I change? When it could be anything. You've been put in a new position in football. You've been asked to do a new job that you've never done before, or anything. You kind of go, well, I've been asked to do it. I've been told to do it. Me worrying is not going to change the fact that it is going to happen. So,
sorry, Jay. Just when you in that moment where the word didn't quite come out, you just made some funny noise, bro. You got me.
Yeah, well, sorry, but yeah, but that kind of like that moment where you just kind of go, right, I can't change this. Let's just challenge it head on and let's just do it. You know what I mean? Just let yourself, like riding the wave. We've mentioned it so many times. Like that is just the moment where you kind of sit down and you just sit there and you're like, okay, let's do this. You just have to face it. And I think everyone feels that. I think everyone gets into that feeling. I don't think that someone, or most people, will enter something with true anxiety. I do think that they kind of do enter that stage of accepting it and just kind of going with it. And it is daunting. It's really horrible. And, I'm sure there's people that deal with things really well and they just go, all right, fine, let's do it. And they can just do that. Again, that comes with experience. But for me, with those new unpredictable situations, I'll be honest with you, I feel super nervous up until probably the last hour, and then I can just deal with it. It's just something that I do in my own way. I think everyone's got their own way. I don't think there's a set method. What about you?
For me, it's like we spoke about, that preparation. What can I predict and how can I deal with that? And then outside of that, I think it's just like techniques to kind of calm down your nerves, like a few deep breaths. But did you watch the Masters?
What, with the golf? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch too much about it, but my brother and dad were watching it. And my dad told me about Rory McIlroy. And basically, obviously, this was his first Masters he won, right? And the golfer he was up against for a lot of it was, I believe, Bryson. I think it's Bryson Tiller. I'm not too sure about my golfers. But it's definitely Bryson. Definitely Bryson. He was up against Bryson.
Bryson Tiller was a rapper, Dan.
I think he might be. I've got to say, I think his surname's Bryson. But anyway, outside of that, he was up against Bryson. And Bryson's a golfer who, from what I've heard, gets in other golfers' heads, right? And they asked him afterwards, did Rory speak to you? He didn't say a word to me. Rory just trusted his routine, cut out all the noise, did exactly what he had planned, and the outcome was that he won. It could have been that he lost. But if Rory had lost, at least he trusted his routine. And I think in moments where we can't predict something, I think you've got to stick to your plan. Stick to what you feel is right. We always speak about being authentic. Stick to what you feel is true to you, what you've trusted in, and you can't regret it. If you've done something which you fully back and you've not changed that, you've backed it, you can't regret that because you've thought about it a lot and you've cared for it and you've put your trust in it, you've put your value into it. So that, for me, that's an interesting sort of thing, because with what do I do now? Obviously, I'm into my sports psychology, and golf is quite one of those sports where you can change. I was watching a bit of women's golf the other day, and she was going through her different golf clubs. And sometimes you see with golfers, it's like, oh, which one's the right one? Which one do I do? And, the pre-shot routine is quite a big thing for golfers. There's a lot of thought into that process. There's a lot of different avenues you could take. But I think it's about preparing beforehand and then trusting that routine and sticking with it. So when you get those unpredictable moments, you can trust that. And in that question of what do I do now, you've already kind of pre-thought it. So that's what I'd say about unpredictable things.
I agree. And with the golf as well, it was Bryson DeChambeau. I saw the
okay. I think Bryson Tiller is some like rapper or something. I got it wrong.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. You've got to clip that. Bryson Tiller, big shout out to you, mate, because you just got a shout out about golf. I bet you didn't even think about that anyway. But that, for me, that Rory McIlroy thing served a lot of different. I can't even describe it as a thing. Rory McIlroy's Masters win, which is such a massive thing, getting that green jacket and being able to play on one of the most, if not the most prestigious golf course in the entire world, and actually just looking at his story, when he was a kid, and there was a video of him with the guy training, and you just saw the passion he had as like a 9-year-old kid. His dad worked 100 hours a week, to quote his dad, and then he worked as a cleaner, he worked on a bar. He did all these things to pay for Rory McIlroy to go and do golf. His parents put in that sacrifice, and now Rory McIlroy, after a decade of not winning any trophies, has gone and won the Masters. And that is just phenomenal. He just grew up on this small area of Belfast. Funnily enough, the same area that my granddad and his brothers grew up in, Belfast. Just this very small working class area, and now he's just achieving all this. And I think sometimes people think that only a select few people in this world get that opportunity to achieve that. And I'm not speaking from a point of someone that has achieved these things that I want to achieve in my life, or achieved anything like Rory McIlroy has. But I believe that I can. Whether I do or not, that's just how it goes. It's a mix of luck and how much work you're willing to put into it. But I believe I can. I believe I can achieve stuff. Like I don't think I'll be winning the Masters anytime soon.
I was about to say, I look forward to seeing you in the green jacket.
Yeah, I'd love to see myself win stuff like that. But anything I put my hand to, I'm gonna back myself to win. And that's another thing I kind of want to talk about is like backing yourself. You know, Rory McIlroy that day, as you say, was just completely locked in. He knew what he wanted. He wanted to win that tournament. And I don't think that him not speaking to Bryson DeChambeau, even though people made it out to be something it wasn't, I don't think there was anything malicious in that. But, you know, you have to lock in and focus. And that's what he was doing. And if you really want something, that's exactly what you got to do. So I'm a massive Rory McIlroy fan. I would say that if you're supporting a team in golf, I'm a Rory McIlroy man. He's one of the greats. You know, he's fantastic. But yeah, what are your thoughts on kind of backing yourself? You know, is there situations where you shouldn't back yourself?
I think know your limits, know your boundaries. You know, I'm not going to go to, I don't know, a basketball competition and think I'm going to be the best there because football's my sport. So know your limits and know your boundaries. You know, don't kind of become a little bit delusional and think you can back yourself in anything and then you just sound like a bit of an idiot. Like, mate, you're not that good at that. You're not going to win or whatever. But in terms of backing yourself, I think it's very important. You know, a lot of us all of us have insecurities. And at the end of the day, you know yourself the most. And you've got a choice really to kind of back yourself or, you know, let your potential kind of run away from you. And I'm not saying it's an easy thing. You know, kind of going towards your potential is a very difficult thing to do. You know, really harnessing that energy of who you want to be in life and really getting to that place. Some people really struggle because they have insecurities and they're not confident and they're trying to work on that. And people have a lot of barriers in their life. You know, I feel very fortunate for my position, but I know there's people out there who have barriers to being able to do what they want to do. And they've got more adversity in their life. And, you know, that's another big thing, dealing with adversity. You know, what do you do now is a great question for that. But I think in terms of backing yourself, I think it's always important to back yourself. You know, what has someone got over you? You know, maybe some people have had a better background, they've been raised better. But in terms of your mentality, I think you can always back yourself in what you do. And at the end of the day, I think a big thing that I was speaking to the head of football at Northumbria who gave me this opportunity with coaching. And we were joking because in my first interview, like it wasn't the best interview. And he said to me that I didn't really speak too much about football. And that's what he wanted to hear. I spoke a lot about experiences I've had, which like, I don't know, things like D&V and, you know, other things I've done, jobs I've had. But I eventually got the opportunity to do the internship. And a big thing he's a big advocate for is just doing things, just doing it. That's the best way you learn is just by doing it. Don't always think you know it all. You're not always going to have it figured out. And I think backing yourself is such an important thing because that's that step to doing it. That's that jump. And if I guess some advice for someone that isn't backing themselves, I'd ask the question, okay, why aren't you backing yourself? What are you saying to yourself? Is this a legit thing which is stopping you from doing something? If it is, then what can you do? You know, what can you do now to sort that? But if it's you against your own head, you know, write those thoughts down and think, you know what? Is that real or not? No, that's just me telling myself that, and go through that sort of process. You know, what would you say to someone who isn't backing themselves?
The reason you're not backing yourself is because you haven't gone out and done it. Like, this is the thing with coaching. If I was anticipating me joining a team for ages and I hadn't just gone and jumped in with something, anything, any sort of coaching assistant role, anything, well, then there's a reason, because you haven't been confident enough and strong enough to just go, right, I'm going to go and try it out.
How do you sort of grow that confidence? Because I know you've spoke about it before, where you've done all this theory stuff, you've done all these online courses, but then you've actually been like, you've had fear about actually stepping into it. So speak to me about that process. How did you get yourself to jump in?
Well, the theory is important because it is good to have that preparation, like you say. If you are doing preparation for becoming a football coach 2 years before you become a football coach, like I would say that I was looking at doing it a long time before I turned 18, but I didn't. So the theory is important. Learning how coaching works on paper is important because you need to understand the sort of basics of what to expect from a football team, but you will not experience more than when you just try it. And the confidence literally did just come from a case of do you want to do this? Yes, I do. Okay, right. So I'm lucky I was in a position where Ryan, who we know, shout out to Ryan Fuchs. He's the man. It
was his birthday yesterday, wasn't it? Big up Ryan.
Yesterday. Big 26 now, So he's a coach at Beeston FC. And he said to me, do you want to come and be an assistant? Because he knew that I was interested in joining. I said, okay, sure. When I got my DBS sorted, all good. And, the best thing I could do is literally just turn up one night and just meet the lads. That is all I can do. And I don't know if there's a way for me to tell you how to do it, because I actually didn't. I felt nervous, but I was more nervous to actually instruct rather than be there. Because I know that sounds crazy, because you think a coach is always head on talking and doing all this. Whereas that first session, I was just observing, because I do think that the next step towards doing something is being a little bit observant and not doing as much. So with that first session, I just watched on the training. I watched how Ryan does his thing. I watched how Sarah, the other coach, does her thing. And I thought, right, I'm going to formulate a plan now in the week. Now I feel more confident. I've met the lads and they kind of know what I'm about. Then I can set my standards the next week, and it did take a few weeks because of various reasons. But eventually they let me do my own sessions. And at first it was just a case of I'll just suggest a session and Ryan will run it. Then I did my own. And you kind of just build into it. There is going to be a sort of moment where it clicks and you go, I've got this. Do you know what I mean? That is something I felt maybe after a couple of sessions after the observations. But it's something that just comes with time. It comes with time, and you'll know the moment when you feel truly confident to go out there. Like if you said to me, Jamie, in an hour and a half's time, you need to go and do a session with this team for an hour, I feel confident to go and do it. Do you know what I mean? Because I've observed, and I know my style. But the biggest thing with coaching I've always found is, what is your style? That's such a daunting thing when someone asks you that. What is your style of play? What's your style of play? How do you manage players? You think of all these different factors as like a messy table in front of you. And you're like, where do I even start cleaning this? But you don't need to think of it like that. You need to introduce yourself to the players. You need to understand what you're dealing with and who you're working with, because these are all humans and individuals. What are their skill sets? And then you build it from that. You build it around the players that you've got. And it's like anything in life. I think that it's okay coming in with a theory. It's okay coming in with a concept of what you want from a situation. But for me, until you've truly understood what you're dealing with, what the resources are, what the situation is, I don't think you can truly get the best out of that. So I would say it's a case of observing and slowly learning.
Yeah, I think the main thing I kind of took away from what you said there was, if we're talking about backing yourself and making that jump, whatever you want to do in life, ease yourself in. Do the small steps first,
Yeah.
Let's say with my sports psychology journey so far. All right, okay, I've had some experience where I've done a motivation program, right? But how did I get there? First of all, I just said to someone, what do you do at uni? What did you do at uni? I spoke to someone while I was working on a bar, and I got to know them a little bit. It's like when you speak on LinkedIn to people, I always find it quite interesting that you kind of just have a little conversation first. People don't want to just think, oh, you just want something from them. They actually want to get to know them, what actually show that you care for them. And I think it's those small steps. I spoke to John, who I've spoke about before, and then eventually that built into a relationship where we went for coffees and we spoke about sports psych. And then an opportunity came to John, and then he wanted me to come help him out because we built a good connection. And I think for anyone who is struggling to jump into something, what is that first step you can do to kind of ease yourself in? Is there something right now you could do? Maybe you're really into physics. Can you search up one fact about physics today? You now know one more fact. You've gone in the forwards direction. I think people sometimes think doing something, you have to make a really big step first. I think it's always the small steps, man. And things take time. Things don't come quickly. We live in a world now where we expect things to come quickly. And I want to give a shout out to one of my good friends, Ollie Nella. And it links into this story, this sort of theme of today. I know he won't mind me saying, but he was going for a placement, right? A lot of our friends were going for finance placements, and our whole uni year, Ollie's been looking for one. And, I know he worked hard. I know he put his time into it. And he did the research, he did his interviews, and he eventually got a placement. So congrats to him. But these things take time. These good things that you want in life take time. They're not going to come easy. They're not going to come quick. And I think it's having that awareness. As long as you are working hard, you're putting the effort in, just trust that things don't come quick. They take their time. Everything's a sort of long-term process. The things that are worth it are. And I think just a lot of time in life, it's just having that awareness.
Yeah. And you know what as well? This is going to sound harsh, but why do you deserve them to come quickly to you? And that sounds like a personal attack to maybe someone who's listening. But seriously, why do you deserve the things you want to come quicker than someone else who's worked harder, that has put more research into it and has invested themselves in it? Because you don't. I know for a fact that someone's worked harder than me at coaching, and they're maybe coaching a couple more times than I am a week. Now, I know that coaching isn't the thing I want to do in my life, but I love it. And I'm not going to lie to you, Dan. I would love to be a good coach and work somewhere as a coach. That would be great for me, because it used to be journalism for me and that sounded great, but it's not my gig. It's just not how I see myself. I think it's too, you could say ruthless, but I just
Is that separate from commentary though?
Yes, that is separate from commentary. Because for me, commentary there isn't really a journalism side to that, in terms of, obviously you're doing your research, but more you are just describing a game of football and you're enjoying it, you're analysing it, you're doing whatever. But the kind of wider point is that I would love to be a coach, but I know I've got to work a bit harder now. You know, when I go to Australia, I've got a team hopefully lined up, you know, and I'll be able to help out with football. That'll be a few days a week of coaching. That's a jump for me. So I will have to do the confidence thing and jump into it. But that is what you have to do. You know, and that was daunting for me. You know, I know we're talking a lot about football coaching specifically, but like when I was there, I didn't go out to go and do coaching. I'd never had the intention. I didn't bring anything with me. I just wanted to go. And my mum's friends' kids, they play football. And the first day we went to go and watch them play futsal, they asked me to go and coach just as an assistant. And I just observed. And then the next time I went to futsal, I was coaching the team because the coach wasn't there. Then the next time I went to watch them play football, I was coaching, you know, and these things, they just kind of come about and you just get thrown in, and it's exciting because if you're genuinely passionate about something, being thrown into it will always be daunting, but it should also be exciting, you know? So, and that is just so important, you know, and I really wish everyone the best in everything they try and do in life, because the problem is with our world is, Dan, is that everything is pretty much oversubscribed. There's that many people that like just trying to get an opportunity to do something, like for Nella, getting a work placement. It actually seems like when our parents were younger and they go, oh, you used to just be able to walk into a job. You know, I got my job because I knew someone here. And it's like, well, what, now you're a fully qualified lawyer earning $300K a year and you didn't even go to school. Do you know, these things, the world is so different now and you have to adapt to how life is. And there's so many more hurdles to jump. So actually, even in a different way, it's important to not compare yourself to your parents and people that maybe had it in a different way to you. You know, the world now is a mix of people saying it's easy to get rich or to succeed, even not get rich, because that's not the main objective, but it's easy to succeed. And then there's people going, it's hard. You're never going to work. You're never going to be anything, you know, and that is such a mindfuck. I'm sorry to swear, but that is such a mindfuck. Like you know, for young people now, they're so scared of like, what side am I going to be on?
Yeah.
So what's your kind of thoughts on that? Because I think people do feel like they need to go down a certain path to kind of get somewhere, but it's like the social media thing is ruining people.
I think there's always going to be noise. And I think these days the noise is louder because of things like social media. But I also think we have a choice. I think we have a choice on what we consume. You know, are you following a person who you don't like seeing what they're posting? Well, unfollow them then. Like, seriously. Yeah. And, you know, Gary Vee talks a lot about it. I love Gary Vee, man. I love him.
He's so good, man.
You know, you can, this algorithm we have on social media, you know, you can make it positive for yourself. You can cater it to yourself. You can cater it to things you want to see. But I think we'll always see bad news. We'll always see these people who are trying to do the get rich quick schemes, or, you know, trying to tell you it's easy to do something or it's too hard to do something and it's too much noise and we get overwhelmed and we get stressed and we don't know what to do. And it aligns into our values. It aligns into everything we've said today. Back yourself. Do what you really want to do in life. You know, figure that out. Dan, I don't know what that is. That's fine. That's fine. You're not supposed to know right now. Figure it out. and enjoy that process. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, I've got a question for you then, Dan. And this is going to be something that other people I'm sure will get involved in, specifically Liverpool fans. So maybe this is something your dad would be interested in. But you're an academy graduate of a Premier League football team, let's just say. Okay. And you've won everything. You've won everything. And you want to back yourself to make a move to probably the biggest club in Europe, without a shadow of a doubt. Outside noise is massive. How would you deal with your situation if you were Trent Alexander-Arnold? Now, I know that sounds like such a crazy question because we don't talk about football a lot here, but that outside noise thing is massive because he lives in a city that he grew up in and that are diehard football fans. That's one thing I'll give Liverpool credit for is I'm not a Liverpool fan by any stretch of the imagination, but the people who live in Liverpool that are Liverpool fans are diehard, proper fans. So to live in that environment, the hostility that he's going to face now for the next couple of months before he leaves is insane. How do you fight off then? If you have backed yourself, how do you fight off that sort of external noise? Because I don't think that we're going to get anywhere near what Trent's got in terms of someone doubting us or whatever. But how would you deal with Trent Alexander-Arnold's situation?
Like you say, I think it's very difficult because I can't imagine myself being in a position like that. But I mean, I'm not going to say I can't answer that question, but I'll try my best to. I think the good thing is Trent knows he's made the decision, and for him, this feels like the best decision. So just from that first step, all the noise is going to be easier to deal with because he trusts in what he's done. But I think for someone like Trent, I think he's posted a video on social media. He's been honest about the move. He's not been, he's done it in the right way. I don't know if there is a right or wrong way, but he's not left in a hostile way himself. But I think that noise will always naturally, he could have done it in the most perfect way, but the noise is always going to be there. And I think it's one of those things where sometimes the noise is always there. And for someone like Trent, he'll probably go his whole career with a Liverpool fan saying, you should have stayed with us, you would have been a legend. But I think that's where it lies within yourself. And for Trent, it lies within him. Is that decision the right decision for him? I'm sure he's thought about it. So all that noise is going to be a whole lot easier to deal with. So I wouldn't say I've got a particular technique that Trent could do, but I think it ties into what we're saying about backing yourself and that making sure that the decisions you're making in life do feel right to you, because if they do, you can't really do a lot wrong, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you, I still think Olarein is my favourite fullback in the Premier League. I think that he possesses such a great skill set, but Trent is a very good fullback, and I'm sure I think it's going to be a tough test. Real Madrid is going to be really tough for him defensively. He's got a lot to his game that I think he's still missing, that he needs to work on. So I think that's something for Madrid, when he goes over. But it's so tough because to hear people that, and you might have this with your life in things that you choose to do or you choose to believe in, that your family might doubt you. And your family say things about doubting you and they don't support you, that hurts. I can't say that I've felt that a lot, thankfully, but people will go through their life with family not supporting them. And in a way, Trent is almost feeling this now, where the Liverpool fans he's lost a lot of the fan base, and he's obviously left for free. So I sort of understand the frustration there, but there's someone else to blame for that isn't Trent, and he wants to achieve his dreams and he backs himself to do it. At the end of the day, I think this Trent problem is on Liverpool as a football club.
We don't need to dive too much into football.
But I think the Liverpool fans are going way overboard with this. But on the wider point that we're making, I think that it is, it is important how you deal with that external noise. And to credit Trent, despite all the threats and things people are saying, he's gone and made his move, and he's doing what makes him happy, and he believes he can achieve. So I've got a lot of respect for that.
Exactly. And someone like Trent going to Madrid, what can he do now?
Oh, mate, I want to know what Kev thinks about this. Off episode, obviously. Don't be ringing Kev up asking him. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed what we've been talking about today. We've had a mix of everything. Back yourself, Trent, a bit about what do I do now. Tell us, what do you do in tough situations? Is there a specific method you have? On Instagram, I'm looking for really logical, cool comments. On TikTok, I'm expecting some absolutely mental stuff. So, let me know what you do in those situations. specifically you TikTok people, because I find it so amusing. I think it's brilliant. I hope you've enjoyed episode 19. We are going to be back every Tuesday at 10 in the morning. And of course, keep up to date with our social media, Making It Poddy on our handles, and then for our Gmail, if you want to just give us an email and contact us, makingitpoddy@gmail.com. That was episode 19 of the Making It podcast. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks for listening.
What do you do now?